Hello and welcome back to the Second and Two podcast. I'm your host, TB. I got my co-host, producer extraordinaire, Mr. Riz himself, Jody High Roller.
The list just keeps growing, huh? That's what we're doing these days?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. The list will continue to grow. The list of nicknames for my guy over here, JD.
Your co-host, producer extraordinaire,
Riz
man
God.
with the hat, glasses, aficionado.
The
we can add what we want.
Yeah, I like it. Aficionado. I'm always good with that one. Adding that in any context is always good.
Hey, it's just one of those words you just sprinkle in there, and everyone's like, "Oh wow."
We'll just start calling you Salt Bay too.
Yeah, see, exact. That's what I'm saying.
There we go. The sprinkler.
Yeah, literally. Do what you need.
Oh man, so we're getting into the sort of the dead part of the NFL offseason, to be quite frank with you. This is kind of like May and June are not like the most fun times of the NFL offseason. But we promise if you stick with us, you see how I did that right there?
Yeah.
That we're going to give you some entertaining stuff. We're going to talk a lot this summer about schematic approaches of different teams, team building, how teams' schedules are looking, what they look like within their own division, and really ultimately doing a real assessment of every team going into the 2023 season. We'll make some predictions. We'll get all that rolling. But the first thing that we got to really look at before we can look at any of that, the most recent news in the NFL, the schedule release. Joe, how did you look at the schedule release? Did you see any of it live as it was rolling out through the day on Thursday? Or were you just like, hey, I see the schedule, I'm going to go look at it?
Oh, for me, the way it plays out is I get an email and or a text. I don't remember which one, but I think I get both from the Rams. Like I'm signed up for their like emails or whatever you want to call them, their newsletter. Yeah. So I instantly, so I was at work for one. It's Thursday. So I get the text, pull out my phone. I'm like, oh, dang, the schedule's out. Look at the list. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty early for that Bengals game we were trying to figure out about going to. And so I send it over to you after looking at their whole schedule of like when things are going to play out. And it was like, well, see what happens now.
Well, for the listeners, we're planning, still figuring it out now that the schedule is actually out, but we're planning on giving you some coverage of a game next year that we're actually going to go to. We'll figure out which game and when. We were really hoping for Rams, Bengals, and Cincinnati because that's a Monday night football game and people have real jobs. Yeah. It is feeling less likely that will actually be the game that we may go to. But we'll have some other stuff in store, hopefully, maybe for that game or before that game. And then, or at some point in the season, dealing with one of those two teams. We'll keep it a secret for now.
Yeah.
But our goal is to go to a game this year and do a little coverage from the game. So hopefully we'll figure that out. Once we do, we'll obviously let you mark your calendars on that. But for now, I think we're going to look at the schedule as a whole. Before we really get into some serious questions about the schedule, I am curious, Joe, did you see any of like the social media rollouts from some of these teams that they now have popularized in the last couple years?
I did not see anything too special. I don't know if it was from the Titans organization.
Yes.
But that's about the only one I've seen where they were like in downtown Nashville asking people like, oh, who is this team? And they're like, oh, that's so-and-so. Like what I remember was the Texans. Someone said that's the Atlanta, Florida Dolphins or something along those lines. And the Chargers, I remember specifically, they said Lightning McQueen. And so I don't know. I don't know if these people had a nice little day fade or whatever you want to call them. But if they don't know the teams like this, that's hilarious.
It certainly seemed that the Titans social media team was targeting a certain member of the community with their questions. I would say they all fell into the category that you assessed the day fade group. Also, the answers were just objectively hilarious. There was more. The Atlanta Falcons became the Red Stallions, RAR. Which the Falcons actually changed their social media account for like a week that said Red Stallions. They were on their socials. They were the Red Stallions, and then they just put out a tweet the other day that said, "All right, that's all for now, but don't worry. Like when we play the Titans that week, we will be the Red Stallions on our Twitter account all week."
Bro, that'd be great if they like got uniforms that said Red Stallions. That'd be hilarious.
Gosh, that would be so funny. That would be such a great epic troll. Week. Then the Colts were mistaken for the Cowboys, not once but twice by two different people. The Steelers, I believe, were called the 49ers were called the 49ers, 69ers, Stars. That was another pretty good one. So overall, I thought that was creative by the Titans social media team. It only worked with the folks downtown in downtown Nashville that provided such epic content. The Chargers did their, they ran it back with their much anticipated and celebrated anime troll job of the other teams on their schedule. Many hidden gems within that. I believe the Lions are on their schedule, and for that part of their schedule release, it was just the Gamblers Anonymous like hotline thing, an ad for just gamblers. Like if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, like that whole thing, because of multiple players on their team being in the sports, the NFL betting. There were some creative, real like, wow, they really took some shots fired with that. So that if that's a real annual tradition now, I'm here for it. I don't mind. I think it's kind of fun. Some of the teams did some real funny stuff with that. So, I just was curious if you'd seen any of it, but sounds like you did.
The Titans. Yeah, it was a good laugh. I gave it a like. Had to
gave it a like.
You gotta like the content like that sometimes.
Gotta give them a like.
Bluebird these days, and/or photography. They be just sending you stuff that you be liking. So if they're gonna gear it towards me anyways, might as well make it something funny.
No doubt. All right, so let's get into the meat of this thing. We're talking the schedule today. So my first question for you, Joe, has to do with the first game of the season. We learned pretty early. I believe it actually leaked on Wednesday that the first game of the season in Arrowhead is going to be the Lions at the Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs. A lot of respect being given to the Detroit Lions here. Many people think they may take a second step. Raise your hand if you're one of them. For the folks who can't see, I raised my hand. How do you feel, Joe, about the Lions getting the first crack at the defending champs on opening night?
Well, originally I was like, that's tough. They're just going to get smoked out there by the Chiefs, defending national champs, as you said, right? But I thought about it more, and I was like, well, they're changing their mojo a little bit, right? They're coming off a decent season. I think they went 8-9 or something, and then
9-8 actually, 9-8.
9-8.
Yeah, I don't want the Detroit Lions mob coming after you for being wrong on that. So it's okay.
Well, they should have been like 11. Honestly.
Oh, well, don't do that either. Don't do that either now. Lions fans have just gotten over that. Come on, man.
But anyway, so I was thinking, like, man, they're going against the Chiefs. That's going to be a tough game, especially first game to watch overall. Like, everyone's watching it. It's the most primetime game of all time. Just the first Thursday that everyone's watching that one. Football's finally back. Yeah. So I was like, this isn't a good spot for them. But then I thought about it, I was like, well, like I said, they're trying to switch things up. You go and give them a chance at a team that, maybe they have some Super Bowl hangover. Who knows, and, so then it depends how you want to spin it. But at the end of the day, it could be a very fun game, and I convinced myself that maybe the Lions even pull it off. Out of after being like this is gonna be terrible for them, I might be convinced they win. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. I am excited to see the Motor City Fighting Dan Campbells open up the season. I mean, I think they made some. I guess we've talked about it. Much scrutinized draft picks in the first round,
yeah,
but overall, I love their draft. I think they got better, and I do think there's some like really good young talent. I love that they're going to have consistency at the offensive coordinator position, and having that with Goff in the next year with more weapons. I'm a little bummed that we don't get to see Jameson Williams to open the year with them now with his gambling suspension.
yeah,
But overall, though, I feel like the Lions could put up a fight. I'm with you. I don't foresee like a Super Bowl hangover for the Chiefs. I think they'll be pretty amped up to go night one and likely
True.
win the game. But I could see the Lions being fun and scrappy. And I think that's like the exact team that could, give the Chiefs a little bit of run for their money on opening
Yeah.
night, and that should be a fun game. So yeah, I'm with it.
Yeah, that was my ultimate conclusion after thinking about it for like a solid 30
It's
minutes.
a good choice by the NFL. It's a good choice
Yeah,
because
yeah,
Lions fans are jacked for this season. They're gonna tune in. Chiefs fans are gonna tune in, and I think there's enough people that anticipate the Lions taking that step that it's gonna be like, cool. All right, we get to see right now opening night if they're
yeah.
ready for this stage.
No, that's true. Let's see so that's the first game of everything. So is there anything besides that very first game that you're looking forward to in this season?
Oh, like just a game
Just
that.
any game from any week, wherever you were planning,
Ooh.
like
Um, Looking at the schedule, I think the 49ers at Eagles rematch, NFC Championship game rematch, week 13 is juicy.
yeah,
Um, Number one, I think a lot of people anticipate those two teams being the two best teams in the NFC once again, or at least two out of the three or four best,
yeah,
pending
that makes
injuries, of
sense.
course, and whatnot. So for one, it's the NFC title game rematch. It's
True.
two of the 3 to 4 best teams in the NFC, presumably. Obviously a lot can change. We've learned that year to year in the NFL that things are different every year. It's also Debo saying the 49ers were, quote, better. I don't know if you caught this, Joe, but he went on a radio show, I believe, or a podcast, one of the two, about 2 weeks ago, saying that the 49ers were the better team, and the only reason they lost was because they were playing 10 on 11 because they didn't have their
You have a
quarterback.
quarterback.
Their quarterback's all getting
That makes
hurt.
sense.
And basically that it was like he was just really salty, kind of felt like he was
Yeah,
kind of insinuating the Eagles didn't actually beat them, that it was just like sheer
the
luck
luck of the
that,
draw. Yeah,
yeah, that they didn't have their quarterbacks healthy. And so I think that adds a little extra sugar and spice onto the matchup. You
yeah,
know what I mean? A little bit of extra juice, especially for a middle of year, week 13 matchup. Then you also just have the 49ers defense versus the Eagles offense. Bosa on that defense and Jalen Hurts on that offense. Like, you're talking about two of the greatest units in the NFL last year. Likely, should be that way again this year, again, pending injuries and whatnot. Both teams will have new coordinators on those sides of the ball. New defensive coordinator for the 49ers, replacing D'Amico Ryans. New offensive coordinator for the Eagles, replacing Shane Steichen. So, or as Gronk would affectionately call him, Spikeman. But I think by that point in the season, week 13, both teams should be firing on all cylinders, even with the new coordinators. I mean, you could potentially be looking at playoff seeding on the line. You could be looking at, the Philly crowd versus Bosa. That was kind of a fun rivalry
yeah,
last
yeah.
year. Like all
That
of
is,
it, all of it wrapped into that. I anticipate that game being one of the more fun games on the NFL schedule this year, and they kind of snuck it into week 13. So I'm
yeah,
excited for that week specifically. Yeah. What about you,
yeah.
Joe? Anything stand out for you?
Ooh, anything in particular? I mean, I don't want to. I don't know if this is giving it away later on, but I mean, the Bills Bengals. That's just
Mm,
a lot
mm,
riding on that game. A lot of what
yeah.
if scenarios from last year. Now I guess they could come into play, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
but that's probably
Um,
the most juicy one. Probably some good playoff implications for that game as well. So
is that week 1?
no.
Okay.
That's like
What week is
week.
that?
If I'm gonna guess 7, but I don't believe that's true. Don't quote me. I'll tell you right now though.
Okay. All right. While you're getting yourself prepped on that, I do have kind of a follow-up question then. I mean, looking at the week 1 slate, because everyone's always charged up for week 1 because it's just, oh my gosh, football's actually back. I
Yeah.
am curious to know, what game are you most excited to watch that first week of the NFL season? Obviously, we talked a little bit about opening night, Chiefs Lions. We're both excited for that one, but besides that one, what game are you most excited to watch week 1?
So when I looked at this, there's a lot of good games week 1. Ultimately, my answer is gonna be Bills Jets. We'll see
Ooh,
Rodgers.
yeah,
That's
I like that.
Monday night as well. That's another reason why. But we'll see Rodgers against Josh Allen. We'll see if the Jets truly are. We're really missing that quarterback piece to get them, further in their
Hmm.
in their playoff picture. And it'll also be, that's a tough game for both teams week 1. Like if the Jets are riding that high getting Rodgers, they're missing piece, and the Bills, after falling short getting the playoffs, they get the first crack at the new Jets. Not only that, but the Aaron Rodgers being in the AFC. So that's my main answer. But Bears
That's
Packers, easy division rivalry. Rams Seahawks, same thing. Broncos Raiders, same thing. And the Raiders, Jimmy G, that's another one in there that
all.
makes that one a little better.
I
But yeah,
like I like all those picks. That Bills Jets game, Monday Night Football. That's a great opening Monday Night
yeah,
Football game.
that's
I'm
fun.
with you on getting to see Rodgers as a Jet. It should be a very competitive game. I mean, theoretically, the two teams fighting for that division. Obviously, I mean that AFC East is now arguably the best division in football. I think
Yeah.
when you consider all 4 teams could potentially win that division. I know a lot of people are kind of writing the Patriots off at this point, but I just don't think it's smart to do that. I think Bill Belichick and Bill O'Brien now being the offensive coordinator really makes that different for Mac
Uh-huh.
Jones. Um, I mean, we're going to get into a lot of this stuff in the summertime, and so I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but I like that matchup for all those reasons. The one I might throw out too is 49ers at Steelers. That's just one of
Ooh,
those matchups that you only get every 4 years and
yeah.
only every 8 years in that place. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
49ers at Pittsburgh, or
Ooh, that's tough.
so that's a really fun opening week game. It's 2 teams that were I believe, did the Steelers make the playoffs last year, or they just go 9-8 and barely miss it?
No,
That's what it
I think they
was.
made it.
No, the
I
Dolphins made it over them, right? Isn't that what it
Oh, I
was?
don't know.
I
I
think
know
the
they went. I
Steelers
know they had a winning record. I don't know if they made it.
I think they ended up going 9-8, but just missing it.
Huh.
But so it's 2 teams that are potentially playoff teams this year. I mean, I think I'm excited to see kind of what the Steelers, with the draft that they had and some of the things they did,
Yeah.
sort of new look for, Kenny Pickett and what they'll look like
True.
against that 49ers defense. I think that's a game because it's just 2 classic franchises that don't get to play each other a whole
Yeah.
lot, and to open the season like that, I think is a fun one.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of division games that week. Like we got Cowboys Giants as well. Another one that like caught my eye a little bit could be Dolphins Chargers. I don't
Mm,
know. Could be fun. Tua's good to go. Get them back rolling, and then it
yeah,
could be high scoring or something. I don't know. It just sounds fun. And
yeah,
then
I
quick
agree.
backtrack that Bills Bengals games week 8. So I was close. That's Sunday night in Cincy. But
Sunday night in Cincy, week 8. Oh, okay, cool. That's Sunday Night Football.
yeah,
Oh, dude, dude, the primetime games,
yeah.
they might have kind of nailed the primetime games so far this year, at least based on initial assumptions.
Yeah. Speaking of those, there's let's see, like 4 teams that got 6 of them: the Chiefs, Chargers, Bills, and Cowboys. Who do you think has the best chance to deliver on all those games that they're getting? 6 of them being prime time.
Ooh, great question. So the Chargers, the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Cowboys. I mean,
Yeah.
the answer feels pretty easy. When you consider those teams, it's the Chiefs.
Yeah. The
I mean,
Super Bowl winning team.
every time Patrick
Yeah.
Mahomes steps on the football field, he's must TV.
Get a
I mean,
sidearm out there.
and not just from like the standpoint of, oh my gosh, look at all the plays Mahomes makes, but like I also enjoy watching that Andy Reid offense. I think everyone saw that after the Super Bowl when I kind of gushed over all the things that they did in the red zone and the fun adjustments they made. Like those weren't spectacular Patrick Mahomes throws. Those were just unbelievable scouting, making the right adjustments and saving things for the second half to then just go, smoke Philly's defense in the red zone. That was, I mean, they always have, Andy Reid always has little wrinkles.
Sure.
And then I would say the other three teams, the Bills, the Chargers, and the Cowboys, if we're keeping it a buck right now, those three teams generally are like up and down.
Yeah,
like
true.
year to year. It doesn't feel like those three teams are, none of them have won a Super Bowl in quite some time or ever. And they have unbelievable talent on their teams. They are also like that kind of like you love watching them play because it feels like those three teams are either weren't winning or like crashing and burning epically. So I think that's probably why they got the primetime games that they did. Plus they have, marquee quarterbacks, all three of them, and head coaches that people, respect and all that good stuff. So from that standpoint, I'm sure those could be entertaining, but they could also, it feels like maybe one of those three is down to, destined to be like not nearly as good as we expect, right? Like there's always that team. It feels like it's going to be one of those three. I don't, I couldn't tell you who yet. Haven't analyzed each of those teams yet and what they've done in the offseason and their schedules and all that. But it just feels like the Chiefs have a much greater chance of being the team that everyone thinks they're going to be. Plus, if you look at who the Chiefs play in those games, obviously the opening game is the Lions.
Yeah.
They play the Jets. Rodgers versus Mahomes, I'll always be locked in for. They play the Broncos. Okay. Can Sean Payton fix Russell Wilson? And that's a divisional game. That's a great game to put on national television. I don't know how you feel as a Broncos fan. Maybe not.
It's tough, but I mean, it's a divisional game. They could normally pull one of those two off. So,
yeah.
And who knows? By that time, maybe Sean Payton's got things rolling on the bright side for him. So
yeah. Then you've got the Eagles Super Bowl rematch as a primetime game. I don't need to say much more about that. They get to go to Lambeau, and it's like, all right, Jordan Love, is he ready to have the Packers as a contender? Plus, it's, again, we're talking about Pat Mahomes in Lambeau. Like, that's a great game. And also, I don't think Patrick Mahomes has ever played in Lambeau. So, again, it's an iconic quarterback in an iconic place. And then lastly, they play the Patriots. And I just think Andy Reid versus Bill Belichick is always fun. It's the can Bill O'Brien fix Mac Jones and that Pat's offense, and that's always been kind of a sneaky rivalry is Chiefs-Patriots. Obviously, when Brady was with the Patriots, it was a better rivalry. But even still, it's still a good one. So I feel like those are all good games. Like I think I'm interested even in the teams the Chiefs are playing against. So to me, I think the Chiefs had the best promise of delivering on those games.
Yeah, what I was thinking maybe the Cowboys on this one, just simply
everyone loves to watch the Cowboys.
Yeah. They're America's team, bro. Come on.
Yeah, whether you hate or love them.
No, I mean, realistically, I'm pretty sure all these teams not only play each other for either of their six or just in general throughout the year, but same thing. My only thing with the Cowboys was they're playing the Lions as well, which is like not anything too crazy. It's week 17, so at that point we'll have a good idea of who both those teams are. So that was the only thing with that one.
Okay. So looking at things, I mean, if we go to the primetime, go to the other end of it, I am curious, who do you think got snubbed on primetime games? So I'll give you the teams that have no primetime games this year.
All right, word.
Now they could always be flexed in later in the year, but as of now, they have no
Yeah.
primetime games. You have the Colts, the Texans, the Cardinals, and the Falcons. No primetime games. And then the Commanders have one primetime game. So I'm curious, out of that group of 5 teams, which team do you think got snubbed the most?
If I had to guess, or I guess not guess, if I had to pick one, I'd probably say the Cardinals, just simply
Ooh.
because they're in the NFC West. Like that division within itself is always tough, you know. You got Kyler Murray at quarterback. So like I couldn't really tell you much about their team outside of Kyler Murray. Maybe D Hop's still there. I'm not too positive. I know they just lost JJ Watt, but like that's the team I would pick. Obviously, if you go Colts or Texans, like they got new quarterbacks coming in, you could always go with that type of hype factor, right? Based off like young core team. Commanders only having one seems a little like they should have at least another one, right? Like they did decent in their division last year. They have good weapons. I don't think the only thing they're missing really is like a quarterback, you know. And the Falcons, I couldn't tell you anything about that team, so as bad as it may sound, that makes sense why they have none.
I mean, I would say the Falcons and the Commanders, I could easily argue for why they're in the position they're in. Sam Howell and Desmond Ritter don't really get my juices flowing, you know?
Yeah,
Though I will say I'm excited to watch Bijan Robinson. So
yeah.
that would
That's
be the
about
one
the only
thing
thing
I
I
would.
know about the Falcons.
Yeah, like the
And Kyle
Falcons
Pitts, I guess.
trio of recent first round top 10 picks on offense of Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. That potentially could be extremely fun to watch. The question is
Yeah.
really just comes down to like Desmond Ritter, can you be a guy? So like if he is, then all of a sudden that Falcons team is really fun to watch. And
Yeah.
we're sitting there
that's
saying,
true.
why the heck did they not get any primetime games? I don't know. It depends on how you feel about Desmond Ritter.
Yeah.
The Cardinals, like with Kyler feels like he can be must-see TV at moments. So I'm with you. I think the Cardinals probably got the most snubbed. I think there's also a weird thing though that the Cardinals may be ready to move on from Kyler, and there's a lot of people feeling like they didn't build their I mean, it's a new GM, new head coach, right? So like these are not the guys who drafted him.
True.
He got that contract. A lot
And
was
now
made of
he's
his
fooling.
immaturity. He got hurt. Like
Yeah.
all the weird gaming stuff that and like watching film clause and all that stuff last
Yeah,
offseason, it still feels like it's permeating throughout the league. And then there's the idea of like, if the Cardinals are really bad, can they take Caleb Williams next year? So there could be an idea of like moving on from Kyler. So maybe that's where the anticipation of the Cardinals just being bad comes in.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, then I see it. The Colts and the Texans, I mean, if those rookie quarterbacks turn out to be good, I could see us being like, oh, wow, why did neither one of those? It would have been nice to see maybe one primetime game of Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud. So,
Or even them playing each other or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, Colts versus Texans feels like a classic Thursday night football game in October, right? I mean,
yeah, no, exactly.
kind of could have knocked out two birds with one stone.
Peyton Manning versus Arian Foster, like.
Yeah. Well, I'm just even just right now, it's just like, oh, these two teams that are not very good with young quarterbacks. Thursday night's kind of like the sub primetime game, like it's kind of the one that's like, all right, we got to give them one. Let's give them Thursday night football, right? Like, kind of feels like Colts Texans is a Thursday night game, like a classic bad Thursday night football game where it ends up being 18-15 and it's just all field goals or something weird. I mean,
okay, you don't got to take that shot. Come on.
Sorry, that was Colts Broncos last year. My bad. Another team, another horse reference. All right, I'm done. I'm done taking shots. All right. Yeah, that's what I think.
Is there any? Would you say any team has a quote unquote easy schedule and or hard schedule? I don't know which one you were looking at more so down the road, but what are your thoughts on that?
So here's the hard and easy schedules, I think, are always the most overrated thing that people can talk about this time of year. Like, we don't know who has a hard schedule, who has an easy schedule.
That's true.
When everyone's talking about, well, based on last year's winning percentage of their opponents, they have the hardest schedule. It's like, yeah, but we always know there's going to be a team last year that was really good that's going to suck this year, and there's going to be a team last year that sucked that's going to be really good this year. Like, it happens every single year that the NFL flips. That's why it has such a fan, so many people who are fans of it, because it can just like flip in an instant. We've seen it so many times.
True.
For instance, the Rams are 5-12 last year. The year before, they're winning the Super Bowl. So like everyone who's had the Rams on their schedule last year probably thought that was a hard game. It turns out it wasn't as hard, especially when Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, and Cooper Kupp are all hurt, right? Like, so
we're watching Baker drop 50 on the Broncos. Like,
yeah, exactly. But then then you have a game where you're like, oh, maybe that is an easy game. Then it's not. So to me, it's really like the whole strength of schedule thing this time of year is absolutely pointless. When we go back and look at things and say, oh, who had a hard strength schedule? That's different. I do think you can look at schedules and based on a few different things. Is the team you're playing coming off a bye? You have a stretch of divisional games? Are you playing more games on the road than at home? Like, I think there are certainly stretches within each team's schedule that you can look at and be like, oh, that's the hard stretch of their schedule. That's the easier stretch, right? And so then when you think about it that way, a stretch of like 5 to 6 games within a schedule, I think that's probably the more
recognizable thing you could look at.
Yes, year to year, even at this time of year, to be able to look at a team schedule and be like, ooh, that's a tough stretch, or ooh, that they should win a lot of games right here. That's an easier stretch. So when I think about it that way, I looked at every team's schedule a little bit here. I think a team that really had a stretch that stands out to me, the Eagles. Their kind of mid to the end of the year schedule, weeks 11 through 16, are absolutely brutal looking. I'll read them off to you and then I'll kind of go back on it. So week 11, they play at the Chiefs in a Super Bowl rematch. Week 12, they host the Bills. Week 13, they host the 49ers. Week 14, they go to the Cowboys. Week 15, they go to the Seahawks. And week 16, they host the Giants. So first of all 6 of those teams were playoff teams the last year. Again, doesn't always mean something, but the likelihood is there will be, of those 6, probably 3 or 4 will be playoff teams again. Yeah. So worst, best case scenario, that's still a 4 teams in 6 weeks stretch that you're probably playing playoff teams. That's first and foremost. Secondly, their road trips in that stretch are brutal. In Arrowhead, or at Arrowhead and at Seattle, are 2 of the toughest places to play in the league. So you got to go both of those. Then you're talking, you also have 2 divisional games, the Giants and at the Cowboys, which are always grueling for them. Those are always tough. Both those teams were playoff teams last year, and so that makes it even harder. The Eagles embarrassed the Giants in the playoffs, so that probably makes it even harder, quite frankly. Then you're talking about those other 2 teams remaining that I haven't, kind of touched back on. The Bills are a legitimate Super Bowl contender at this point. They have to be taken seriously. Yeah. And the 49ers, I already talked to you about that game and why that game is so juicy. So like that 6-game stretch to me is about as hard a stretch as I found on anyone's schedule in terms of just taking in all those factors. And I believe I can't remember who, but at least one of those weeks, a team is coming off their bye week before playing the Eagles.
Oh, dang.
So that also makes it hard. So this is a shout out to, I don't know how many people who are listening to us maybe also listen or read some of his stuff, but Warren Sharp, he's a big time like football gambler, but he's looking at things more in terms of strategically, like, he's not just placing random bets. He's like really building schemes, I guess you would say, for like trying to predict outcomes of games. Yeah. And one of his big things that I heard during the season last year that paid true, that he's been doing a lot of research on, is rest discrepancy. So he said that can be a big potential factor in determining who wins a game. So like if a team's coming off a bye versus a team who isn't, that's a big time thing. Or a team's coming off, they played Thursday the week before. And the other team played Sunday, so they had a little like mini extra days. Or, a team's played Monday the week before while a team played Sunday, and that's that extra day. So like that rest discrepancy can be a big factor in determining who wins a game. And so it's something that you got to really look at and pay attention to when you're like looking at games. Like, oh, is the team they're playing coming off a bye, or did they play Thursday the week before, that kind of thing. So that's something I was trying to keep an eye out for when I was looking at this too. In terms of an easier stretch, and I don't think you can say any NFL schedule stretch is easy by any means, but having a perceived easier stretch, I think the Saints, the way they opened the year, could potentially get off to a really hot start. They opened the year at home against the Titans.
Okay.
So the Titans, I think, are in a little bit of a transition period. By that time, they could have traded Derrick Henry. I don't know if that's still. I think that's still kind of out there. That could happen. I assume Tannehill will be the starter, but you never know. They may be starting a rookie quarterback or a second-year quarter. I mean, we'll see. I think the Titans are in a real transition year, so that could be a very winnable game. Then they go to the Panthers. Divisional game, tough, but could be Bryce Young's second start ever, right?
True.
Or Andy Dalton is still the quarterback right now, so you're getting that. Either way, it feels like, hey, you want to get the Panthers early in the year, right?
Yeah.
No, then they go to Lambeau, go to the Packers, one of the toughest places in the NFL to play. But again, you're talking about early starts for Jordan Love, right? And he hasn't played a lot of football. I think you want to get the Packers earlier than later. Then they play the Bucks at home. The Bucks feel like they're in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes right now. I honestly think the Bucks could be the worst team in the league this year. No offense to what they're doing, and I love Baker Mayfield for what he did with the Rams last year. But just if you're going in the NFL offseason, and all right, Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask, I'm not feeling
that's
100% great. Then they go to the Patriots. I would argue that's the toughest game in that stretch for them.
True.
And even still, again, you're getting them earlier in the season where they're still working out the kinks with Bill O'Brien and Mac Jones. And then finally at the Texans. Again, you're getting Stroud earlier in the season rather than later. Week 6 is about the time where you would say, okay, guys, maybe starting to figure some things out. But I would still say it's earlier in the season. Now, the interesting thing about this stretch that's different is obviously you're talking about 4 road games out of 6. So that does make it harder, to say it's easy. But I just think you're seeing a lot of teams in transition, especially at the quarterback position early in the season. I think that's when you want to catch those teams rather than later. So to me, the Saints could, be a team that's like fringe playoff. And if they can start the year 4-2, 5-1, certainly that would make a huge difference in whether or not they get there. Right. So I think the Saints have a good shot of starting off hot this year, based on that schedule.
Yeah. And you could, the Saints fan base could be riding that high too with Derek Carr coming in. And if they come out hot like that, that could be spicy right there,
Well, it's interesting because the catch-22 to what I just said is that the Saints are also in kind of a weird transition year, and they've got Derek Carr as a new quarterback. Now, it's different because he's a veteran, which is very different from what a lot of the other teams I talked about on this list, which are mostly, rookies and young guys.
Yeah.
But still, it's not like to say the Saints will be firing in all cylinders early on in the year either. So we'll see.
Yeah. And they're in a good spot with their division being, they're all in like weird spots in their like couple year stretch. So that'll help. Let's see. Do you have a favorite week of the NFL based on matchups?
Ooh. I think I've talked about this week in a couple different ways already, but it's week 13.
Yeah.
Thursday night football that week is Seahawks at Cowboys. I think that's a fun game, possibly a playoff matchup. Chargers at Patriots, possible playoff matchup. Lions at Saints, again, could be 2 teams competing for like a wild card spot, or maybe even 2 teams that could potentially win their division.
Awesome.
Falcons at Jets. It depends on probably what the Falcons. It depends on what the Falcons. Again, I told you the path to them being a fun watch is all those skill guys around Desmond Ridder. I don't have to say much about the Jets that we haven't already said. Rodgers, playoffs, all that good stuff. Cardinals at Steelers could be the worst game of that week. I mean, Panthers at Bucks. That's like a fun number 1 picks at quarterback, short guys battle.
Yeah.
Colts at Titans. Anthony
Colts at Titans.
Richardson
Okay.
versus Will Levis, maybe?
Maybe will, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. First of many battles to come. Let's see. Dolphins at Commanders. Could be a snooze fest. I mean, could be. Maybe the Commanders are better than I expect. Maybe their defense rises to the occasion. It's a really good Dolphins offense versus a really good Commanders defense. Broncos at Texans. I love Sean Payton versus D'Amico Ryans in that. That should be fun. Browns at Rams. I feel like both those teams are like rebound season right now. So like that could be a fun game too. 49ers at Eagles, I've mentioned. I'm most excited for that game of the entire season. And then Sunday Night Football, Chiefs at Packers, another game I've mentioned. Mahomes at Lambeau and Jordan Love.
Super Bowl ever.
Yep. Oh, Joe. Oh, all right. I see you.
Hey, the pool, you like that pool?
I like the pool. Little history. And then I got Bengals at Jaguars for Monday Night Football. Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence, T. Law.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a great slate of games. Week 13. I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, that does sound fun.
What do you think? Are you with me, or do you have a different week?
Oh, I did not look at a different week. That was on me. I will tell you.
It's like I wasn't ready for this one.
No, I was looking at which divisions were playing which ones, and that's kind of how I based it. So like I don't know how I didn't pick a specific week, but in terms of what I just said, my favorite is the NFC West is playing the AFC North. So, you know, you got Cowboys, that Cowboys division playing the Bengals division, right? So that's always fun. Keep all those West Coast teams too, for the most part, besides the Cowboys. And so that could be a good time. And then my next closest was NFC. Oh, wait, my bad. I said this.
I was going to say, did you just put the Cowboys in the NFC West? I was really confused. I was like, there was conference realignment that I didn't know about, man.
I would say I was looking. I said that one, but I was reading NFC East versus AFC East. So that's on me. That's on me. That was my second one. The NFC West. Sorry, the Rams division, and then the NFC East playing the AFC East. That's on me. That's really bad.
Well, it's funny because I was going to ask you what division do you think has the most exciting schedule. So I mean, I guess that's kind of where you're going here, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So. That's where I was looking at with that. That's on me. I clearly got mixed up. There's too many. I have east, north, east, north, south, west, all in one section. On the other side it says west, south, east, west, south, north.
It's okay. You're the producer. You can just edit it out if you want to.
No, there's no need. There's no need.
The benefit of producing your own show.
That is true. I could always do that, but no, there's no need.
If you guys are wondering,
I'd rather sit here and look dumb than make it be like I know everything I'm doing all the time. You know what I mean?
If you guys are wondering why Jody always comes out looking so good. Oh man. All right. So you kind of answered my question on that. I guess then my next question would be, I want to know, what's your record prediction for the Broncos, my friend?
So I think
Denver football Broncos. What is Sean Payton doing with them this year?
I think just based off, what we've seen last year and question marks if Sean Payton comes in and makes good or bad decisions, I think they go 9-8. But I think they have the potential to make it up to like 11, and they also have obviously the potential to be worse than 9-8. But 9-8 is where I'm putting them. Very solid year. Yeah,
it's funny because I laughed because 9-8 is the most. So when it was a 16-game schedule, 8-8 was every football fan's like, if your team wasn't as good the year before, it's just we're going 8-8 this year, we're going 500. So now that 8-8 is turned into 9-8, and you talk yourself into like, hey, we're gonna have a winning record. Like that's the thing to shoot for. And it's pretty funny just how like, hey, if you're bad, mediocrity is what you're shooting for the next year. 9-8, we can get it. We can get there.
Yeah. But so the reason I said they got potential to make it like 11, maybe they steal one from the Chiefs and like the Chargers. Okay. Or like some other team that they're playing. But that's why I've ended up with my looking over their schedule. How do you feel about the Rams? What would you say they would go?
You'll never guess.
9-8?
That's why I laughed so hard when you said 9-8. So here's my take on the Rams. And again, the beauty of this is we're gonna deep dive all of these divisions throughout the summer. You get each week you'll get a new division kind of coming from us, and that's how we're going to cover things in the summer and just look at each division and its totality, team by team, and kind of try and do some record predictions for each team within the division, as well as who we think will win the division, who may end up making the playoffs, that good stuff. So I reserve the right to change this prediction if once I do my deep dive and film study on all these teams. But right now, just off the cuff, knowing what I knew last year, knowing what I've seen them do in the offseason, looking at the schedule, right now I think they're a 9-8 team that performs better than, their over-under win total, I believe I've seen it at 7.5. So that would be a whole game and a half over what people think they're going to be. And I do think that Stafford being back healthy matters a lot more than people will anticipate. I think their offense is going to be much improved. They could not score last year. It was a struggle. There was so many guys hurt. I think it's going to be completely different on offense this year. I think Cam Akers is going to have a bounce back year. They have a new OC, really revamped their offensive staff. It's still McVay, though, I mean, at the end of the day, so that's not going to change too much. But what I do think will change is the health on their offense. I think their offensive line is going to be way better. And I have a feeling offensively they're going to be able to score like the normal McVay team. Where I really heavily doubt them at this point in time is their defense. I think their defense is going to be extremely young and therefore inexperienced and struggle, especially early. And so I think that will cause them to not necessarily get out of the gates real hot. And I think they're going to have to outscore people to win games. And just when you're in that position, it's just usually not a great recipe. I mean, they still have Aaron Donald on that defense. So certainly that will help. But outside of Aaron Donald, there are no recognizable names or faces on that defense right now that if you're not a Rams fan, you would know these guys. I mean, the one guy who really played meaningful snaps for them in the Super Bowl a couple years ago that will be back is Ernest Jones at middle linebacker. Outside of Ernest Jones and Aaron Donald, basically everyone on that defense is new. So
Fuller's
it's
gone?
going to be,
Fuller's gone?
Kendall Fuller is back, Jordan Fuller is back. So Kendall Fuller is someone else. Jordan Fuller is back in the secondary. He did not play a lot last year, really hurt. So he is back and fully healthy for the first time in like a couple of years, actually. So that's a guy, but he did not play, if you remember in that Super Bowl run, he didn't really play a lot. So it was really more Rapp and Nick Scott. And so now Fuller is back, but we'll see if he's the same guy he was before the injury. In 2019, he was awesome for him. The 19-20 season, he was really good. In 2021, he was hurt and kind of replaced as the season went. And then last year in 2021, he was really good. And then last year, whatever, I'm mixing up my years, but basically he was hurt for essentially 2 years. And so we'll see if he can return to form. But yeah, everyone else is going to be pretty new. So I went through their games week by week. I mean, they start with a really tough game at Seattle. They bookend their year with at Seattle and at San Francisco. So I think they have a really tough start, really tough finish. I just think they're going to lose both those games no matter what. So I just have them sandwiched in between with some better stretches. I mean, start at Seattle, I think that's a loss. They go home and get to play the 49ers.
Tough game.
They cannot beat that team in the regular season. They're like 0-8 now or something like that in the last
in the regular season.
8 games.
The only time they won was that NFC Championship game,
which they won when it mattered.
And they needed it though. They won the Super Bowl.
I just think that early in the season, the Niners may, with the quarterback situation, that may be where the Rams can actually get them. And they're at home, so I'm just going to say motivated, monkey off the back when they get the Niners. They happen to get them early, get them right, and so they beat them. So then they go to Cincinnati for Monday Night Football, a game we mentioned earlier. That's a tough primetime game. I just don't think they win that game. I just don't think they'll be good enough defensively yet. They go at the Colts after that. I think you're getting a young Anthony Richardson. That's when you want to get him. I think they win that game. So I got them starting 2-2. Then they play the Eagles. They're not winning that one. They get a nice after starting 2-2. They get a nice 3-game home stretch, but they lose the first one. Win the next two against the Cardinals and the Steelers. So 4-3. The Cowboys at the Cowboys. The Cowboys just seem to have their number at this point. They beat them pretty good last year, so I'm going to give them an L on that. 4-4 at Seattle or at Green Bay, I should say. I don't know. I think they're going to win that one. I think Jordan Love. That one. I don't know if the Packers are going to be really good this year, so I'm giving them that one. The home, then they get the bye, and then they get Seattle at home. So I'm giving them the win off the bye right there. That puts them at 6-4. The Cardinals on division game on the road. The Cardinals could be in the
implode,
the Caleb Williams sweepstakes by that point. But I'm fudging the numbers here early with a couple wins that may be tough for them to get. So I'm giving them a loss on that one.
Okay.
6-5. They get the Browns. I think they beat them in the bounce back game of the year. 7-5. The Ravens at the Ravens. That's a tough one. 7-6. They get the Commanders at home. Sam Howell ain't it. 8-6. They get the Saints on Thursday Night Football. Short week, prime time. Tough one. I'm giving them the L on that one.
Ooh.
8-7. And then they get the Giants on the road. Think they win that one. 9-7. Then they get at the 49ers. They lose that one 9-8. So I think they're 9-8. Maybe just missed the playoffs. Maybe they sneak in as the 7 seed. We'll see. But that's where I have them finishing right now. 9-8 based on the preliminary thoughts. So.
Well, I too had them going 9-8, but I think as you just broke it down, I think we flip flop the Giants and the Saints right there at the end, but the same result.
Okay, so there we go. I think, like I said, 9-8 is the most cop out fan answer ever. But I really was not trying to do that. That's how it happens.
That's how it counts. Yeah,
that's how the cookie crumbled in this one, and so I went 9-8. I probably picked some games with my heart and maybe tried to even out with picking some games with my head. We'll see what happens with them. I'm not expecting a Super Bowl bounce back season by any means, but I do expect them to be better than they were last year. I just think McVay is too good, Matt Stafford's too good, Aaron Donald's too good. That infrastructure of those 3 guys, and really 4 with Cooper Kupp, those 4 guys are just too darn good at their job to absolutely suck this year. I just think they're too good. So I imagine they'll hover around 500 because of what their defense will be.
Yeah. That, and I mean, they've had some time to recover too. At Coop, it's Matt Stafford as well. So they'll be firing for sure.
Yeah. All right. So banger of the week to kind of close this out. I have a movie and a TV show to give you. I'm giving you a 2-for-1 special this week.
That's a never before done. Just
never before done. The first time ever on this segment. Banger of the week. 2-for-1 special. Number 1, I'm giving you the movie. It's exactly what you expect. It's exactly what you want. It's a fantastic movie. I enjoyed it. Jake Gyllenhaal is in rare form. The director put his name in the title.
The Covenant.
Always a bold move. Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. Fantastic movie from the standpoint of gives you a little bit of truth serum about our time in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And then kind of gives you the perspective of the interpreters working there for the U.S. military and how they put their lives on the line. I mean, really, for the U.S. military, for their benefit. And how it makes it very obvious that the system put in place, the idea is that these people are doing this to get visas to come to the United States. And so that promise does not always seem to be fulfilled. And so it's kind of a bummer, honestly, but not surprising at the same time. But anyway, the way the movie goes, it's about the relationship between this guy, Jake Gyllenhaal, and his interpreter.
Yeah.
And what they're willing to do for each other, essentially. And I won't say much more than that, but really good movie. A lot of pretty good scenes in terms of the action in the film, shot really well. I definitely could relate to Jake Gyllenhaal's character and what he was thinking in moments. They did a good job of not making it more than what it needed to be. I thought it was a really good movie. So I recommend Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. Second one, TV show that I stumbled upon recently and have actually was able to binge quite a bit this weekend. On the on the edge of Mother's Day here. Yellow Jackets. It's a Showtime TV show, not HBO, which is a real
that's impressive
break from normalcy for me. If everyone who knows me, everyone knows all my shows end up being HBO shows, but this one is actually a Showtime show, and Showtime has done some good stuff. I really like Dexter, for those of you who know that show. Okay. But if you ever read Lord of the Flies in school, and you remember that book, the premise is like these like preteen boys land on an island and form like factions, and they end up kind of fighting each other, and there's even maybe some like savage killing of each other and all that good stuff. Yeah. Just the idea of like what happens if you're not in society, when you don't have societal structures, like what is the natural form of humanity. And so this takes that idea and applies it to a girls' high school soccer team that they're like flying to nationals in the year 1996, and their plane crashes, and then it's that same deal. They're in the Canadian wilderness trying to survive.
That was about to be my question.
Now the cool twist on this one is they do a dual timeline where there's 1996 and then present day, and in the present day you see like a select group of the girls who survived. But you don't actually know, like, if those are the only girls who survived, if there are other girls out there, like, what's going on. And so there's, like, a dual timeline going back and forth between, like, what's happening in present day. And they're trying to solve certain mysteries in the present day. And then what's happening
what happened then?
Not necessarily what happened then, but, like, I don't want to give too much away. But there's just stuff happening in the present day that is linked to then.
Okay.
And them surviving that event.
Gotcha.
And so there's, like, a dual timeline. So they end up... The group of survivors spent 19 months in the Canadian wilderness before they were rescued. Dang. So basically a year and a half before they get rescued. And then so you see how that like impacted their lives, the ones that survived. There's about 4 of them that they really feature prominently in the first season of like, okay, so I know these 4 girls survived, that you know that like right away basically. And then but there was like 20 something that survived the initial crash.
Yeah.
So you go through all that. But it's just kind of going back and forth. So it's giving you like little bits of information in the present that you then sort of, when you're going back to the past, you're like, oh, she said this thing. And the opening scenes of the show, this is not giving anything away.
Wild, They're probably kind of wild.
Oh, yeah. Like the show is really good. The opening scenes of the show, this is not giving anything away because it's literally the opening scenes. The first thing you would watch, and I think this if someone wants to watch the show, is literally like a girl being chased through the woods and she falls into a bear trap. And then it appears that the rest of the survivors, you don't know this for sure, but based on the shots, it's implied that they cannibalize her.
Dang.
So
day one?
That's the opening shot of the show. Now, it's like the show's been building up to that. I'm now to the point where season 2 is on TV right now. It's in season 2. I've just binged up to the point where I've finished season 1. So I'm getting ready to start season 2. But I'm like 8 episodes behind still in season 2.
Oh, dang.
And by the end of season, there's a lot going on. And so like it's building to you actually learning like who was the girl that fell and who are the other girls who survived, and who, like, you still don't quite know like what's going on with cannibalism and who's eating what and who's gonna eat who. And that's like one of the big overarching mysteries of the show that continues to be like, oh, I'm trying to figure this out. But so it starts like real dark, like right away. That's You're like, wild. Whoa, this is gonna get pretty gross. So but it's a very interesting look into like I said, like the nature of humanity. It's asking big questions like that, or like how deep do friendships go? What is the difference in power dynamics in like normal society versus like when you're out here in the woods, right? Like your skills that you have out here in the woods may make you like super powerful in a group setting there when you're trying to survive, versus like when you're in society, no one cares. No one cares if you make a fire or whatever, right? So it's just very different.
Skill that helps you out there.
And I think because they're doing the dual timeline thing, not only are you getting the like, this is who they are now, this is who they were then, but you're also getting that dynamic of like society versus wilderness. There's a
Yeah.
lot going on, a lot of thematic approaches within the show. You can definitely tell it gets its roots in Lord of the Flies, and then also a lot of it sort of analogies to if you ever watched the show Lost, that's another plane crash
Mhm.
TV show.
Yeah, I know that. I never really watched it.
It does a little bit of some stuff that's kind of reminds me of Lost. So really good show. I highly recommend. If you're looking for something good to watch, it's a good one. Good little mystery show.
Yeah.
A lot going on.
And it sounds like it's still early, so you got
yes,
time
it's
to
still
catch
early,
up.
so you can kind of hop on the
Yeah.
bandwagon. I will say this though, the seasons are 10 episode seasons, and
Hours?
it's showtime. It's about 45 minutes to an hour an episode, so it's a little bit of a time investment. Like I said, I started
Mother's
about
Day?
8 to 10 days ago.
Oh,
So I was doing like an episode a day, and then this weekend I was able to get through like 3 or 4 episodes,
yeah.
going up till Mother's Day. So that's why I was able to finish that first season in about a weekish.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so I'm trying to kind of catch up. Hopefully by like next week I'll be caught up with the show live. That's
There you go.
that's cool. So yeah, if you're looking for something good to watch, Guy Ritchie's The Covenant and Yellow Jackets.
There you go. And if you're looking for something to listen to, our guy Ray Ray, he's gonna be taking us out.